welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Stacy and I am the Chapter Conundrum. And in today's video, I want to recommend 20 short books. If you're either a little bit behind on your Goodreads goal for the year and are trying to fit a few short things in, or if you're maybe planning a TBR for a readathon happening in January, because there are lots of those going on, this hopefully will come in handy for you. I have short books in all kinds of genres to talk about today. I've got fantasy, I've got sci-fi, I've got horror, I've got romance, I've got contemporary, kind of a little bit of everything. So here's hoping you end up leaving today's video with something to check out. Also of note, I have read all of these and given them all at least a 4-star rating. So let's just go ahead and jump in with some of the fantasy and sci-fi stuff that I have to recommend today. So my first recommendation is Pile of Bones by Michael J. Sullivan. And this is a short novella that is part of the Legends of the First Empire series. You don't have to have read anything else in the series in order to read and enjoy this. This is a great way to introduce you to a couple of the characters, particularly Suri and Mina. Suri is a young mystic and Mina is her wolf companion. And this novella follows them kind of exploring the woods around like the main area that the first book, Age of Myth, is set in. Reading Age of Myth before this will give you additional context for a few things in the novella, but it's certainly not required reading in order to jump into this and enjoy it. My second and third recommendations are by the same author, and they're both sci-fi novellas. One is The Test by Sylvain Neuvel, and one is No Kindness Too Soon by the same author. And both of these I think are kind of better to go into not really knowing a ton. So I'm not even going to tell you the premise, just know that they are some fun sci-fi novellas that I really enjoyed. This one I read physically. No Kindness Too Soon I believe is Audible exclusive, but it's a good audio experience. So do with that what you will. This is very short, so definitely one you could squeeze in pretty easily. So another novella that I read and loved this year was How to Defeat a Demon King in 10 Easy Steps. And this is a short lit RPG novella that's a lot of fun. Essentially, in this world, there's a demon king who kind of like revives on a cycle and slowly starts to take over the world. But there's this, prophesied hero that's supposed to spawn like after 100 years and defeat him. But I think we're only like, I don't know, a quarter or a third of the way into that timeline. And basically the main character of this story decides we can't afford to wait for this hero to show up. Like, this demon king needs to be taken down now. So basically this is her quest on how to kind of like level herself up and defeat him. And this has hints of like a lit RPG story without too much of like the real world portions. It definitely reads like she's a character in an MMO. So if you like lit RPG, this is definitely one you don't want to miss. The other thing to mention about this is that it has some moments that are inspired by one of my all-time favorite video game series, and that would be Zelda. Another short sci-fi novella that I absolutely love is Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this is another one that it's better to not really know too much about the premise going in. Just know that it's a dystopian, that there are humans and ogres, that ogres in the society are superior. And the beginning of this opens with a human whose ogre landlord is coming for a visit. And, things don't really go well, and we go from there. So the next one I'm going to recommend is one of my favorite fantasy novellas, and that is Requiem for a Star by Yuji Gutman. And this is part of the Dawnless Nights series, so it's related to Winds of Strife, but you definitely don't have to read Winds of Strife before jumping into this in order to fully enjoy it. And in fact, Yuji Gutman actually asked if I would read this before picking up Winds of Strife to get more feedback on how the experience works that way around. And I loved this. I gave it a 4.5-star rating. But in this you follow Nova, and it's kind of a coming of age story for her character, but it also ties into one of the backstories of the characters from Winds of Strife. And not only is Nova really fun to follow because she kind of questions the norm and marches to the beat of her own drum, but this also has a lot of emotional impact and was very poignant. Definitely, if you read this, don't skip the author's note, and this is definitely one you can breeze through in a day. It also does introduce you to the magic system from Winds of Strife very well, so you definitely won't be lost if you haven't read Winds of Strife, and definitely I would recommend this. It's fantastic. On to a graphic novel series that I enjoy well, with the exception of Volume 2. This is a lot of fun. And it is I Hate Fairyland by Scotty Young. And essentially in here you have our main character Gert, who visited Fairyland when she was 6, but she never found her key to get out, and so she's trapped there, and she's now an adult trapped in a 6-year-old body, and she's like completely fed up with being in Fairyland. So she's ready to wreak some havoc, And the adventures that she goes on within Fairyland and the problems she encounters are just a lot of fun. If you need a good laugh and enjoy black comedy, this is for you. One of my favorite fantasy novellas that I haven't read in ages, and I actually don't remember too much about other than that I loved it and gave it a high rating, is The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. And I read this back in like 2020, so like I really can't tell you anything about it other than that I had a really great time with it. But I do know that this is a popular favorite among his fans, that you don't have to have read anything else in order to read and enjoy this. And I do remember that it has some interesting magic, so if all of that sounds good to you, then definitely check this out. The last fantasy selection I have for this list is The Ice Dragon by George R. R. Martin. And this is kind of like a short, I guess a page-length novella, but it reads like a story. There's a lot of like illustrations in here, so there's not a lot of text per page in some cases. But anyway, this is a fun story that's set in the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it follows a young child who lives in a wintry climate, and she is meeting an ice dragon. And this is kind of the story of her journey of like bonding with this dragon. So if you're a fan of dragons, definitely don't sleep on this. It's super short and can be read in one sitting. Next up, I have a couple of short horrors to recommend. And the first one of those is Escape by Ian Robright. And this is a really fun story about some coworkers who are going to an escape room for like a work retreat kind of thing. But very quickly, they realize they're actually trapped in this escape room and things are escalating and not going very well. And this is just a really fun time to binge through. I did it in one sitting. It's a little bit over 200 pages, but the story definitely keeps your interest and keeps you reading. The other horror novella I want to recommend is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. And this follows a young lady who starts to hear voices in her head and just kind of starts acting in ways that feel out of character for her. And it's kind of her journey through this experience. So she's kind of questioning, like, am I possessed? Am I going insane? Like, what is happening to me? And this one definitely got me when I read it, and I had a good time with it. So definitely would recommend if you're trying to fit in something short. Switching gears from scary to kind of like hard-hitting contemporary, a novella that I've read and that really hit me when I read it was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Backman. And this is a story of a grandson and his grandfather who have a fun relationship, but his grandfather is slowly deteriorating. He's either got like dementia or Alzheimer's or something going on. And this is something that I picked up and read right after my grandmother passed away, and she kind of had the same stuff going on. So it definitely hit me, and there were things in here that I could relate to in my own experience with my grandma. All in all, it was a fantastic read, and I would definitely recommend. Speaking of things that are relatable, but moving into humor, one of my all-time favorites is Hyperbole and a Half by Ellie Broche. And don't let the thickness of this fool you, because it is mostly graphic novel with a little bit of text on the pages. So this reads very quickly, even though it has some chunk. If you haven't read Ellie Broche, you're missing out. She's fantastic. She has several moments in here that make me laugh out loud, and also several chapters in here that touch on super relatable experiences. So definitely don't sleep on this one. And in a similar vein, I also want to recommend the Sarah Scribbles graphic novels. They are shorter and mostly all graphic novel, I think, with the exception of the newest one, Adulthood is a Gift. That one does kind of have some text interjecting amongst the graphics. But definitely same sort of vibe as Ellie Broche. Definitely relatable, humorous stuff that I had a blast reading. Another short, humorous nonfiction thing that I had a great time with is Shit My Dad Says by Justin Halpern. And this book is just chock full of anecdotes his dad has said to him and his siblings over the years. But it also touches a lot on his experience and, you know, what things kind of lead up to his dad coming out with these funny lines. Overall, this was a really enjoyable time, and I would definitely recommend picking it up. The audiobook's great too. A contemporary romance novella that I absolutely loved is The Prospect by Alyssa K. Adams, and she's the author of the Romance Book Club series. But this novella is completely unrelated, and it follows a young lady who is in a small town, but they have athletes that are trying to go pro or have just kind of gone pro that train in her town. And kind of like one of the well-known things known amongst girls in her town is like, don't go falling in love with an athletic prospect, because their goals are everything to them and they're really just here to train. But she up and falls in love with one, and this is the story of how they work through their fears, insecurities, and issues with each other. And it's really sweet and a fun time. Another novella I had a really great time with characters that kind of work through their issues with each other, is Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is kind of two people from different couples whose spouses cheated on them with each other. And so this is them writing letters back and forth to each other, grappling with the affair that their spouses had. I had a really great time reading this one too. If you feel like you just need a hug in a book, the perfect book to pick up for you is going to be The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. And this is just a short book chock full of life truths that follow these other characters. And it's somehow like so easy to see these truths like when they're told to you in little stories with these characters, but there's something that you wouldn't necessarily think of by yourself. But this is the perfect book to comfort you when you're just having a bad day or a bad week, or you're just going through something. Like, the perfect way to explain is just, this is a hug in a book. So if you're going through something tough, if this is a short one, you definitely want to check out. Moving on to a middle grade book that both my husband Jake and I absolutely love, Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie by Jordan Sonnenblick. This follows a teenager who's a drummer, if you couldn't guess, and he basically has some stuff that's kind of starting to happen in his family life, and not everything is rosy. And basically it's him kind of coming to terms with what's happening. I don't want to spoil what it is, but this is definitely one of those books that has an amazing balance of like heartfelt stuff, sad stuff, happy stuff, lighthearted stuff. It's kind of the perfect like well-rounded mood read. And while it looks like it's a novel length, the text is like middle grade font size, so it's definitely a quick, easy read that you can binge in a day. And then the last book I want to recommend here is probably one of my all-time favorite young adult novels, and that is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. And this is kind of like one of those books that came out before young adult was a thing, that kind of helped solidify it becoming a thing. But you follow a gang of misfits who are known as the Greasers, and a lot of them are kind of from like the lower income side of town or have unique family situations. And it's really a story of brotherhood, but also of real teen experiences and tough things. I absolutely love this, and I actually reread it this past year and it still holds up. So if you still haven't read this one, it's another one to give a go. So that was it for my short book recommendations. Hopefully you found something to go check out and read. Let me know down below in the comments if you also have any short book recommendations to add to this list. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out, and have a fantastic day. Bye!